Rodney is, I've known him for years. I've seen his journey and going through all the ups and downs that he's gone through, and I'm really amazed at where he's been. He's a second year university student. He just completed his second year, and he's gone through an incredible journey. I'd like to call up Rodney to come and share a few words.
My notes are on here. First of all, I'd like to thank the Algonquin, to acknowledge the Algonquin people for allowing us to be on their territory. Ukinusukawa, Distua Mestua Wastan. Nitsatapi. My name is Rodney Little Moustache. I just introduced myself to you in my Blackfoot language. I am from the southern Alberta, which I call Niitsitapi territory. And every time I go over there, I just feel alive. I just recently came from there, and there was so much going on in the last few weeks. It's still going away from me. It's still leaving my body, and it was a lot to deal with. And what I do is I go up on the hills and I pray beside my mom's place, and I spend hours up there. Before I left Vancouver, a friend of mine said, "How long do you stay up there?" I said, "Well, usually a couple of hours, but I sinned a lot the last year, so I got to stay up there for about 11 hours. And I sit up there and I pray, and I just think of the ancestors and what they've been through. And I started thinking about this trip and what I was going to say and how I was going to do it. My life before I became Hep C 9 years ago was I was working at Healing Our Spirit in Vancouver, and I had everything going for me. I had a good job, I had a good place to live, I had a good income, I had friends, and I had family that cared for me. But for me, what was missing in my life was a relationship, someone to call my lover and everything. And the past relationships I've had, that they weren't that great. I hurt them or they hurt me, but it was mostly me having to deal with what they wanted to do. I found myself in abusive relationships. My last relationship, the person was Hep C, and he always asked me, "Are you Hep C?" I said, "I'm not sure." So one day, we were sitting in a hotel room in Vancouver. I lost everything. I was starting to lose my job. I started to lose everything. And he asked me, "Do you want to do this?" And I said, "What is it?" He was going to shoot up a needle. I said, "Okay," I tried it. So he gave it to me. A week later, I started feeling really sick. I was at the restaurant, and I said, I had to call my boss. I said, "I can't come in. I'm going to the hospital right now." I was laying in a hospital just in pain, and then all of a sudden the doctor came out, who was Dr. Mark Hall from, he's the Hep C doctor specialist at St. Paul's. And when he walked in, he walked into where I was laying down, and he said, "I'm sorry to tell you, you're Hep C." I said, "What?" I said, "Wasn't I already?" He goes, "No." He said, "That's all the pain that's coming from you." And then for the next 2 weeks, I was lying in the hospital, and my weight was going away, and I was feeling terrible. And my mom came out to see me, and she stayed with me for 2 weeks. After the 2 weeks, she left, and then she saw me turning yellow. It was kind of crazy. I looked like one of Homer Simpson's kids. And and I started feeling bad, and I started apologizing to her, and I told her, "I'm sorry to put you through this." She didn't say nothing, and all she did was smile and say, "I love you." And then 2 weeks after that, we were going for a walk on the North Shore at the Squamish Indian Days, and what happened there was I started feeling a wicked headache, and then I went to the hospital again. I ended up in there again for 2 weeks. I found out I had meningitis 2 weeks later, so I just was another thing I had to deal with. My mom, she came in and she started talking. Actually, I was laying there with a friend of mine looking out the window, and he was sitting there, and he looked up and he said, "Oh my God." And I said, "You see an angel?" And I turned around. It was my mom. She came back for another 2 weeks. And then just when I was on the hill, I thought of that month and a half, and I said, wow, Mother's Day's tomorrow. And it really meant a lot to me what I went through those weeks, having her being able to come out and to be a part of my life again, because deep down I felt that I was letting everybody down. I didn't really think about letting myself down because I didn't really care about myself. I was in a relationship that it felt like it was going nowhere, and I didn't think of nobody else. I just wanted to, it wasn't there. My life wasn't there. In that 2 weeks I was in the hospital with meningitis, I started going through heart complications. I started breathing really fast. I saw the moon, it was full. And I said, I want to come home, Dad. I want to be with you. And then when I was lying there, I was breathing really hard, and they said, Rodney, you have to calm down. You have to calm down. Breathe slow, slow. I almost had a heart attack that day. So after that, I started thinking I almost died again. So like three times in about 8 weeks. And I started thinking, why am I here then? After I got out of the hospital, my mom left, and I moved in with my ex, and then I started doing drugs with him. And then at the same time, I started doing Pegasus, and what was the other one? There was 2 others. I had to do injection and the pills. That didn't work. In a matter of 2 months, I lost so much weight. Like Kerrigan, I was at 90 pounds. And I started feeling really bad, and then I had to go home. I decided to go back to Alberta and to be with my mom. And then it was there I started taking the walks, and then started introducing myself to my dad again. This is me now. This is who I am now. And then I went back to Alberta, back to Vancouver, and then I found out that the drug didn't work. So a year later, I ended up in the hospital again with meningitis. I stopped taking my HIV meds because even though I started living with my ex-lover, we lived a life that wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't a real life. It was just like somewhere to go, sleep, and do drugs and just be. But after that, what happened was I ended up in the hospital. Then I decided to go home and stay for a while. At that time, my mom, she was in the University of Alberta, and University of Calgary. And one night, her and I were sitting at the, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. She's in the kitchen doing her homework, and I'm in the living room watching TV. I was watching Family Guy. And one of the things that I was listening to, they were trying to break into the, Fort Knox, and they had to go through all these different, gates to get to the gold. And then the last one they went into was, he had to answer a question. And he said, what is the unsexiest human name? And he goes, Keith. And that's my middle name. So my mom heard it, she burst out laughing. I walked in and I said, I knew it. So when I was in there talking with her, it felt really good sitting there seeing her smile and everything. And she said, sit down. So I sat down beside her and she said, answer this question. I looked at the question, it had to do with homelessness. Because before that, I was homeless as well. And what happened was, I sat there reading that question, and I thought about what I seen in Vancouver, living in the downtown east side. That's where I ended up. And I started answering the question, and in under 20 minutes, I wrote about 3 paragraphs, and I said, here, look at this. She looked at it, she said, look what you just did. This is a university question. You have to go. You belong there. So after that, I started thinking about my life, and I went back to Vancouver. A friend of mine, he asked me to move in with him to Surrey, and then that's when my life changed 3 years ago, or 3.5 years ago. My life just totally changed. My mindset started changing. Just there's something more of what I'm here for. There's something more that I have to give back, and there's something more that I can give of myself. So I started gaining weight. I started going to take a course actually it started at Simon Fraser. I went there to see a person regarding my upgrading, and she said, have you ever taken an assessment? I said, no. So I went for the assessment, and she said, all you need is your math to get into university. So I went downtown to take a course in math for a year. And then after that year, I went to the university. At the same time, I was taking a Humanities 101 course. It was a free course to understand what university was like. The first day I went to that university, I was walking around in the, I don't know, you walk around a place that you've never been before. You've been there, but then you go there again, and then you start feeling that you belong there. I started feeling that when I was walking around university. I started feeling this tingling all over. So I gotta be here. So I took that course, and then I got in, and then I found out, I was taking the course, and then my mom graduated. And when I saw her grab her degree, I said, I want one of those. I want one of those. So the lady who is in charge of Humanities 101, she asked me if I wanted to apply, and she encouraged me to apply. And she said, the types of things that you bring up in class, that's what we need here, critical thinking. And I said, okay. So she helped me to get in, and then ever since then, when I got the news, I was so happy. And then my doctor, I was starting to take my meds over. I started gaining my weight, my HIV meds, because I stopped taking them. And then what I did was I got on Harvoni. And after that 70 days, or the 6 months I had to take it, after the first week, that's when my body, I could start feeling a change in my body. And then this was after my first year. When I got to after the first year, it was actually the first year, yeah. I took those meds, and then I started feeling good. And then before the second year started, I walked up the hill. I decided to go up Grouse Mountain. I went up for a long walk up there by myself, and I prayed on the mountains. And it was there I started finding that peace. And I started reading more. I started understanding like who I want, what I want to do in my life now. And when I saw my Hep C doctor for the first time in like 3 months, he said, you look really good. I said, well, I feel different. And I said, it's that Harvoni. It's like after the first few days, that's when it started changing me. And then I started thinking about how it's changed me. Like my mind has changed over the last few months or the last few years. It's like being able to focus now on what needs to be done in my life, and that's being able to go out and help the people when I move back to Alberta. My mind is set. When I decide to go back, when I'm done after graduation, I'm going back to Alberta to help my people if in any way they want me to help. My body's changed because I've gained so much weight. Last week I was in Lethbridge with my mom shopping, and I went up to her and I was pretending to cry. She said, what's wrong, Rodney? What's wrong? I said, I can't fit 30 sous anymore. She said, stop that. and then, hang on, my heart, I have to start taking care of myself, because there was a lot of times I never did love myself, and I wanted so much love to come from another person that I was forgetting to love myself, and I was depending on another person to love me for who I was. And it's hard because one of the things that there's no projects like that deal with the word loneliness, and that's my biggest fear, and my biggest enemy right now is loneliness. I have to deal with that. And I was sitting there with when I was talking with my mom, she's saying she does get lonely, and then I was sitting there listening to her, and we just opened up to each other. And through this whole process, what made my heart feel better is that my relationship with her has grown like really strong. I see what she's going through at home, and then I thought of my own life, and I said, wow, it's bringing us together, what's been going on these past few years. She lost her partner last year, and she was going through hell with that. My cousin went through hell this past month with his ex-partner. And it was hard for him, and I was being there for him. But with both those two relationships, I thought of my own life, and I said, I can't do this right now. I want to start doing it on my own, and my heart's feeling better, and I want to love myself more. And doing my treatment every day for that 6 weeks or 6 months was, although it was very grueling, I had to do it. I had to pay back to myself for doing what I've done to myself before. And my spirit has changed, because when I went up I could feel it when I went in the hills, and I sat up there for a long time, and I started looking around, and then I started hearing things up there, and I started noticing things that I'd never noticed before in the hills. I saw these circles in the ground, and I asked an elder what they were. He said, those are TP rings. I said, really? I said, there's a lot up there. He said, there was a lot of pagan people before. You got to remember that. He said, those were our lands up there. And he said, when you go up there, respect that and know that you're part of that life. So that felt good to hear. And then right now, my hopes for the future is to be able to go back to my land or to the Tatapi and then be able to give back with what I've learned at school in the last few years, because right now I'm in gender, race, sexuality, and social justice, and learning about the history of women. Like, I'm glad to be here, and my respect for women at the beginning was like this, but then learning about non-Native and Native women, what they've been through and what they're still going through, it's amazing. Like, wow, I honor you, thank you. And thank you very much for inviting me here. Thank you.